To those who are already on the call, I'll welcome everyone. Chad, I saw your question. I think I wasn't saying anything, but hopefully you can hear me now. If not, then respond back so we can make sure we rectify that situation. We have a number of attendees still joining, so I'm just going to give one more minute. I'll get the presentation up and running and then get started with some of the introductory remarks. Okay, so I will get started. Thanks to everyone for joining us for our most recent CanSSOC webinar. Today's webinar, we're going to talk about our threat feed, give a little bit of an update of the current status, and give a bit of an introduction into another initiative we've been working on, which is vulnerability management. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Huge thanks to Canary. We're using, yet again, their webinar platform, the Zoom interface. Christina is there in the back end, making sure everything runs smoothly. Just a reminder to all of the participants that we are going to use the question and answer function inside Zoom's platform. So as we go through the presentation, if you have a question, please type it in there. We might interrupt and answer the questions as we go, but likely we will just save them to the end in case they get answered later on. Most questions we will try to read out and answer live, but we might answer a few of them via the interface if appropriate. We are going to record the webinar, and so it will be made available online on our new YouTube channel. With the link I'll put at the end. We will email out to all participants once that is up. Please be patient. It can take a little while to render. The last one, I think, actually took a couple of days. When we send out the link to the archived webinar, we'll also send a feedback form for the survey. I'd encourage all participants to complete that form so we can get feedback on both the content of the webinar as well as future webinars and what you think of the vulnerability management initiative that we're working on. Finally, I'll just allow the participants, the presenters to introduce themselves as we go. My name is Jill Kowalczyk. I'm the director for CanSSOC. With me today presenting is Dennis Hasen-Wong, who is managing the delivery of our threat intelligence services. We also have Pascal Bobinet, who has been the primary developer on the vulnerability management initiative. And on the call as well is Hugo Dominguez and Isaac Straley, who will help moderate and answer any questions we might have as we go. So with that, I'll move into the presentation. We're going to primarily spend the most time today talking about vulnerability management. I did want to start off and give a little bit of an update on threat feed. If you have not watched it, we gave a webinar in May on threat feed, which went into a lot more detail about architecture and different components of it. And so if you have any sort of questions left unanswered about the threat feed initiative at the end of this webinar, I'd encourage you to either reach out and ask some questions or check out that webinar. So first, I'm not going to give a big overview on CanSSOC. We also have a number of other webinars that provide some background, but I did want to just emphasize at the start that really, if you engaged with CanSSOC sort of last year and previous years, and said you were interested, we had a number of institutions come to us and say we're interested in getting involved and partnering and using the services that are being developed. Our answer was very much, okay, we just need time. Give us some time. I'm happy to say at the start of this year, we officially finished our proof of concept. The outcome of that proof of concept was the conclusion that it really did make sense to move forward as a collective in the development of cybersecurity services to support the community. And so this was a really exciting time because from then on, when institutions came forward and said, hey, we're interested in collaborating and working with CanSSOC, the answer was absolutely, let's move forward. And so The logos you see on this screen aren't important as to who's on the screen and who's not on the screen, but just to really demonstrate that we have engaged with a number of institutions since May. We're interested and open to engage with any and all institutions, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll also see very important map. This represents the Canada's National Research and Education Network, which includes CANARI as the federal partner and all of the provincial and territorial partners. Over the summer, we've been working closely with a number of the partners that are part of the NREN to explore opportunities for more direct collaboration and how we can work more closely together as we move forward. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those as we go through the presentation. So before I talk about threat feed, I did just want to remind everybody of a couple of concepts that we developed as part of the proof of concept. The first one is what I'll talk about is solution phases. In previous slides, you might have heard this say services phases. I've removed a little bit of that language, not because we're not providing services, but what we're really looking to develop as part of CanSSOC isn't a managed, we're not looking to be a managed service provider. We're really looking to collaborate with the broader community around identifying gaps and challenges and pain points, investigating in collaboration with the NREN whether or not this makes sense to be delivered as a national service and value can be provided that way, or perhaps it should be a more targeted regional service, evaluating technologies, both commercial and open source, to figure out the best way to deliver solutions for the community. We are very much focused on investigating and delivering things that make sense for our higher education community. And so many of the technologies that we see out there by commercial providers, we see have a lot of value. Some of them can be taken directly and leveraged by our communities. Others, we found that adding additional context based upon the higher education community has really taken it from something that has bits and pieces of value but can provide a much wider range of value for the community. And you'll see this hopefully when we give the presentation on vulnerability management. Essentially, we have 4 phases. We take and try out different technology, investigate whether or not we can deliver it, look at what the value proposition is. We've done this with a small number of institutions at the start, looking at bringing in more institutions to help provide input and value in that. Investigating exactly how we can do that, both in the context of those participants that are part of CanSSOC, as well as working closely with CANARI and integrating it into the working groups and structure that they're creating as part of the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee and working groups. And so we're in the middle of exploring and looking at how we can ensure we do that so we all operate collectively in the best interest of the community. Once something gets through evaluation, we see value, we move it on to a pilot phase, which is what we're at with the threat feed right now, offering it out to a broader range of institutions, continuing to receive feedback on that and evolving that. And we're definitely doing that with the threat feed, which I'll talk about. And then eventually we look to move it into a stabilized and ultimately production service. I'm going to put up a little slide around CanSSOC initiatives just to show sort of where we're at. Again, you'll see that we're, as you know, we're offering threat feed out as a pilot. We have continuous monitoring and vulnerability management. That one actually needs to be colored both because, as many of you know, we're offering continuous monitoring as add-on to the CUCHO benchmarking project. And we're in the middle of institutions that have signed on to that are receiving reports, automated reports related to the information that's being seen. But we're in the process, we've just hired a new analyst, and we're in the process of looking at how we can target some high priority issues and add additional intelligence to institutions to help them leverage that information they're receiving more effectively. Vulnerability management, the two are somewhat connected, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our vulnerability management presentation, so you'll see what that looks like. We're also still in the process of evaluating detection and response. We'll have more to update in the coming months, sorry. And then the final item there isn't to say this is something that we're spending time right now developing and evolving, but I put this on there to show that what we're really interested in is getting more feedback and input from the community as to other pain points and challenges and issues out there, and looking to evaluate in collaboration with the NREN whether or not this makes sense to support on a national sector, how we can partner with provincial organizations and other organizations out there to deliver things in the most effective way. So I'll jump into talking about threat feed now. This will be a little bit of a repeat if you attended the webinar in May, but essentially what we're looking to do with our threat feed solution is provide a consolidated way to share out various threat intelligence. So after our last webinar, we got some questions from some institutions who have robust threat intelligence sort of programs or initiatives inside their institution saying, you know, I get a number of different threat feed sources right now. How is this any different? And so many of the sources that we are integrating into our threat feed, institutions can go out and directly get. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity offers out its threat intelligence to institutions at no cost. CanCyber also offers it if you sign up at no cost. We have integrated a few other sources that aren't freely available. So we have signed a partnership with a commercial intelligence provider and negotiated a license in a way where we can reshare it out to all of our partners. And we are also taking the intelligence that we're seeing inside our network of institutions, putting it back into our platform so that we can harness the power of the collective and send that out to the broad range of institutions. And so why ours is different is we're really trying to make it such that institutions don't have to spend a lot of time and resources going out and figuring out which intelligence out there is the best, which has the best confidence. It's all typically formatted in a slightly different way. By integrating it into one platform and sharing out one feed, it allows institutions to not have to spend time on understanding the format, integrating it in the right way. We are also looking at curating this information to provide additional intelligence and information to make it more valuable. One of the things that, as part of this, and speaks to sort of the evolution of what we're looking at, as well as speaks to this curation, is with some of the recent intelligence we've seen out in the community, we're looking at adding tagging to the intelligence we see that comes in and creating a current issues feed. So institutions will see, we've seen a lot of attacks, and everyone might have received a lot of emails last week about a recent sort of vulnerability and threat. You'll be able to go into our feed and see that we have tagged those, when it's implemented, we have tagged that intelligence as sort of a current threat. So you can dive in and focus some time on looking at that. The other thing we're really looking at doing is providing ways in which a wide range of institutions can leverage this information. So if you sign on to CanSSOC and get access to our threat feed, you can log directly into our platform and manually look at the different intelligence that's in there. We recognize this can be time consuming, and a lot of institutions might not have the time and resources to do that. And so a big thing that we're pushing and where we're really focusing our efforts right now is providing the feed in a way that institutions can ingest it directly into endpoint detection devices or endpoint protection devices, such that they can automate leveraging this information. In particular, if an institution has a firewall, you can ingest this information directly into your firewall and then block right off of it. This will allow you, with some investment in time at the start. Early information indicates that once the NDA is signed, it takes only about 3 hours to get it configured and set up in your firewall. Run it in an alert mode for a period of time so you can see what traffic would be blocked if you were to implement the blocking feature. And then once you're comfortable implementing that blocking feature and preventing that high confidence data from coming directly into your network. Also, we have the option of miss-to-miss integration. I've had a few institutions that I communicated with at the end of last week who are interested in the miss-to-miss integration. We're definitely open to this. We're really focusing our limited resources right now on onboarding institutions with their integration into their firewall. But we'll work with institutions on the miss-to-miss integration and understand how we can most effectively support the institutions in that way. So in terms of the status of where we're at, over the summer, I talked earlier about working closely with Orion. So CanSSOC initiated a partnership with Orion early on to see how we could leverage the Orion's expertise, as well as the relationship Orion has with a number of institutions in Ontario through their OnCheck program. It was never intended to be an Orion-only partnership. We spoke with a number of the other members of the NREN and talked about how we would try it out with Orion first, see what lessons we would learn from that, and then look to replicate that if it made sense in other jurisdictions around Canada. And we started that conversations with a few other provincial organizations about how we might be able to do something similar, slightly different, as every organization in the NREN is a little bit different, but leveraging sort of the relationships as well as the intelligence and expertise that those organizations have. And so these conversations are ongoing. If you are interested in taking advantage of the CanSSOC threat feed, and you prefer to partner with your provincial or territorial organization, we're very open to that. You can complete the expression of interest and note that on it. And you, as well as us, can start that conversation with the provincial organization to see what that relationship might look like. If you're in Ontario and you're interested in leveraging the expertise that Orion has and getting access to the feed through Orion, you can do that today, and we'd be happy to support that. As I noted, we're focusing on firewall integration. So we've integrated with Palo Alto and Cisco Firepower already. We're in the process of having Cyvera in Alberta actually integrate the threat feed into their FortiGate firewall, so that we can have them create some documentation, learn some lessons about how that works. And then for other institutions that have that same technology, hopefully the process will be a little bit more seamless, and we'll have learned some lessons through that about how we can do it. While Cyvera has so graciously volunteered to sort of be the first on this isn't to say that only institutions with FortiGate in Alberta will be able to leverage that. We're really looking to share that information across the country. You may have read in our newsletter, we're really excited to announce that the threat feed will be delivered as part of Canary's cybersecurity program. And so what this means is the Canary Cybersecurity Advisory Committee recommended to the board that the CanSSOC threat feed pilot be one of the initial initiatives as part of the cybersecurity program. So it will be offered out to no cost to any connected institutions at the start of the program. And so if you are a connected institution and you engage with us, then we will send you the NDA and engage with you at no cost. If you're not a connected institution and you're a university and college in Canada, then I would encourage you to get connected. You can reach out to your provincial organization and they can help facilitate that. There's a lot of value, not only threat feed, but a lot of other value that you will receive being connected to the National Research and Education Network. So I'm going to really quickly talk about threat feed onboarding. So if you reach out to us and you're interested in taking advantage of the threat feed initiative, this walks through sort of roughly what needs to happen. So first, you'll reach out to us, complete our expression of interest, which can be found on our website. Once we have the information from the expression of interest, we'll respond with more information, including the non-disclosure agreement for your signature. This non-disclosure agreement is intended to be, or is hopefully set up to be, as lightweight as possible. It is an in-term agreement. Canary, as part of the cybersecurity program, is working on a more fulsome agreement, which will guide both or allow you to take advantage of CanSSOC's threat feed, as well as a number of other initiatives that are part of their program. The goal, or the big driver of partnering with Canary on this, is to really help simplify the landscape for institutions. Just like we don't want to have institutions have to go out and sign multiple different agreements for multiple different threat intelligence sources, the added advantage of one agreement will allow us institutions to not have to sign different agreements for all the different pieces and initiatives out there that they can take advantage of. That agreement will be quite fulsome, so it's in development, but will take a little bit of time. And so the interest of providing out the threat intelligence that we have already, we created a very basic, lightweight non-disclosure agreement. It's based off of the one that's developed by the CSE for the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity feed. So it's pretty straightforward. It essentially just states that your institution won't reshare the information we've provided, which is a requirement for us, both for our commercial feed as well as our government feeds. As you're signing the NDA, we'll set up the first technical meeting, which will give you a bit of an intro to the technology. We'll give you access to the threat feed. We'll need to get access on your technical contacts so we can get you started. If you have any questions on any of this, feel free to reach out. The best way to really get started is to complete that expression of interest. We've had a number of institutions complete the EOI to date, and we've been sending out sort of the introductory email as well as the non-disclosure agreement. If you have already completed the EOI and haven't heard from me, you can expect to hear from me in the next couple of days. We work towards getting all of those sent out. So before we pass it on to vulnerability management, I'll just talk about the future sort of threat feed. So as I noted, as part of the Canary cybersecurity program, signing up to threat feed is no cost to institutions. We are looking at developing this initiative as well as all of the CanSSOC initiatives with long-term sustainability in mind. And so we look at ensuring we understand all of the costs associated with delivering this and figuring out a model where all institutions can share in those costs. Currently, the way we're looking at it, it would cost between $2,000 and $7,500 per year per institution, depending upon your size. As noted, there's no cost initially as we sign up, but we're going to be really diligent about communicating what this long-term sustainability will be, so that institutions understand in the future, you know, if funding doesn't continue, we want to ensure we can sustain these services as well as other services with contributions from the institutions. Going forward, we're also looking at integrating additional threat intelligence, potentially other commercial feeds. We collaborate closely with a number of global partners and are looking at automating the global intelligence into a feed as part of this. And so if there's other pieces or components that you think would be really valuable in this, please reach out to us. We are eager to get that feedback so that we can continue to evolve the service. The more institutions that we engage, the lower cost that it will have in the future when we need to look to recovering costs from institutions for this. So with that, I'll finish by saying, if you're interested, please complete the expression of interest. You can find that on our website, and we'll ensure to include the link when we email out subsequent to the presentation. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dennis, who will go through vulnerability management.
Thank you, Jill. Just see if I can properly get control. There we go. So I guess with security and vulnerabilities have always been really tightly tied to the whole concept of cybersecurity. With that does entail quite a bit of actual vulnerability data overload. So many of us are already doing a lot of internal vulnerability assessments. We're getting external posture reports. I guess there's a bit of a lag. Hold on. Technical difficulties. I'm not able to go back. Okay, let me just do this. You have to use the mouse. Okay, so where was I? So external posture reports. Whether you're receiving them or not, companies like BitSight, securityscorecard.io are constantly scanning our networks. External vulnerability reports from organizations like CCCS, or in our case, CERTAC as well, or regional networks. And of course, the commercial internet census that are pretty much widely open to everyone, Showdown.io, shadow servers, etc. And if you're like us, you probably have received vulnerability reports from independent security consultants or other bounty hunters looking for a way to take advantage of vulnerabilities exposed on the internet. In addition to this, we have all that data and information being sent on mailing lists. Even within Canada, there's quite a few mailing lists where we are sharing those information. And then of course, when you have the CEOs and CIOs always being vigilant on the in the news. We always have the major vulnerabilities being exposed in the media, and we'll always get those questions, but are we vulnerable to this or not? So with all this data does come challenges. There's a huge amount of false positives and false negatives. How do we have that confidence in data? How do we know which ones are important for us to look at? Reporting, different people definitely have different needs. We have the technical solutions and we have the aggregate reports. And of course, taking those and trying to engage the teams for corrective measures is always a challenge. Is it just a huge list of tasks? It can be quite daunting. So on top of that, we also have to deal with the trending. A lot of vulnerability data tends to get us to live in the moment, but sometimes we need to take that step past and learn from the past and start planning for the future. But with all of this, of course, there's a huge amount of cost, whether it's internal resources or the wide range of commercial products available. Knowing where to invest that money and that effort is a big challenge. So, like most organizations, I'm vulnerable. Now what? So, one of the biggest challenges, or one of the questions we ask ourselves, is how do I actually plan my actions? Definitely, there's a lot of pressure to address posture, but at the same time, I have to balance that against addressing the biggest risks. Which one should I tackle first? Remediation and strategic planning. What's easier to tackle? Or is there something that I should be tackling strategically because it gives me more bang for the buck? And of course, that always leads to the question, where do I start? Because taking that first step is always going to be the most important and the biggest challenge. And we're hoping that as part of this, and what Pascal will now present, that we might have a solution for this.
Thank you. I'll try to share also right now. Give me 1 second. Everyone can see my screen. Very good. Okay, so I'll start with a basic overview of our vulnerability management system, the infrastructure, how it is made. It's basically made from some Azure VM. We have Nessus and Masscan scanner to discover port of our member, and we're using Nessus to do the vulnerability assessment or scanning of the member. But we're also collecting data from cloud services like Shodan, Security Scorecard, and BitSight. At least we're working on it. It's not perfect yet, but we have Shodan perfectly integrated. And the goal of all of that is to bring the information into a centralized dashboard that we can take decision on without having to access multiple products to get the same information. I'll go a little bit over how we do that with the software we're using. So we have Nessus VMs that are scanning the member every week. That data is retrieved by an ETL server. It's a PowerShell script, basically, that brings that to and transform it to load it to Power BI. And we also do the port scan of each member for all ports, so we won't miss anything. But that's done only monthly, and the information we receive from those port scans are used to update the Nessus scan job so that they are precise and we don't miss anything. So every week, scan job for Nessus is done. It's retrieved by the ETL server, transform a little bit, so it's Power BI is able to read it. It's loaded to an Azure blob, and basically we do the same with Shodan, and again the same process with other services that are available. And in the future, we plan to also integrate Delve to do the web application scanning. And the benefit of that is that by doing a cross-reference of multiple solutions, you're more sure of you're not looking at the false positive, because multiple software are reporting the same issue. So that's a quick wrap up of our infrastructure. Any questions? Or I guess they are taken by the chat. All right. So what is interesting with the way we collect this information is that we can do some custom filter to prioritize the risk in a different way. So one example for us is that whatever Nessus or the other solution are reporting, we will say the highest risk for us is what is also reported by Shodan, because the hacker nowadays, they don't scan the network anymore. They just go to an existing solution that does it for them. So it's stealthier a little bit. And Shodan and Zoomai are there for them. And so what we're trying to do is to regroup all the information of the way the attacker sees us and take the decision based on the risk that this represents. And now at that point, I'll go with a demo of the landscape of this, the main dashboard of the Power BI software. You can use it to visualize which area of the vulnerability or represent more risk for you. So we can increase the threshold, not the threshold, but the CVSS score, or use other metric, and we can see then that most above this risk score 7.53 for CVSS, we can see that Unix is our leader, and Drop Bear SSH. And then if we talk about how we're doing with the Shodan filtering of that information, we can for now select that the socket or the port was seen also by Shodan, so we'll select both. And then the threat landscape will change a bit, and we'll see mainly what usually we believe an attacker would see of us and where we are vulnerable. All right. So for the rest, it's recorded, because sometimes the information is changing, and I wanted to make sure that we're going to see the right stuff. So the IS risks as seen by Shodan, if we're looking only for one risk, we'll select the scan date for we can see all the scan date weekly that are available, and then we'll increase the risk to the threshold that we consider very high. We can see that we have 4 hosts that are affected by that. But if we go with the Shodan as seen it, also we only have 1. So for our perspective, it's this host that we have to take care of first. Another use of the Power BI infrastructure is how to filter for a specific CVE that just has been announced. Obviously, if the scanner have the signature to detect them, we'll use the custom filter of Power BI to do it. We can see that we can browse through the CVE, select one, and see which hosts are affected by this one. But what if it's the list is too long? You can use the filter pane and basically just type your risk number in. For us, it's 2000-0649. And applying the filter, we're gonna get the risk in the list, and we can select it and see that only 2 hosts are affected by that. So if you have a question of, are we exposed on the internet for a specific risk, that's the trick to get it from Power BI. Another scenario is looking for hosts that have been recently exposed, or no, recently discovered by the scan job, so that they were not in the previous scan job. Now the host has appeared, so it's recently published on the internet. And there's a filter just for that in the lower left corner, which is here, the first time. I'll play the video, it's going to be easier. So you select again a date, the latest date for your scan, or any date you're looking for. And with the first time filter, you're going to see only what has been discovered for the last. So these are the 3 hosts that were discovered that did not exist in the previous scan. And you can export that data in a different format. It's all Excel. And then play with the Excel sheet and report on it if it's bigger than 3, obviously. All right, I think it's the same again, the same video again. It's a mistake. And I'm done for the demo. So I think I'm gonna take question if we have, or I can go through the live demo and play with the interface if you wish.
Great, thanks, Pascal. We certainly will start to take questions. I'll just ask if you want to stop sharing your screen. I will sort of finish up by putting up a final slide on my end so that attendees can see how they will be able to contact us.
Okay.
And at the same time, we have questions done through the question and answer. And so the first question is, how is risk determined as part of the vulnerability management process? Hasan or Pascal, do one of you want to take this answer?
Hasan, I'll let you take it because I'm unable to unshare my screen with Zoom. So I'll give me 1 second. Oh, I did it.
Maybe I can add some content on it, and Pascal, you can enrich on it. In terms of risk management process, what you need to understand is that in the end, the process is owned by the participating member. The engine allows you to define what you would put more weight on it. As Pascal has shown, for example, you could decide to put more weight on the fact that you are publicly exposed on Shodan or on any other platform. But down the road, how do you want to assess your own risk based on these vulnerabilities, and how do you want to fix them is still within your internal organization to decide with. What the tool provides is more sources integrated to give you more flexibility over doing that analysis.
And I'd like to add as well that this is part of the planning effort, but as we look at the other features across the services, so with threat feed, vulnerability management, detection and response, there is an exploration in terms of being able to tie it to more specific assets. So locations being able to highlight critical assets or doing some sort of inventory on those and being able to query against it. At this point in time, we're not looking to integrate that effort or to overpromise in what we can do, but certainly we recognize that over time there's going to be some need to be able to have something like that, but we all know that inventorying these assets and maintaining it is a critical piece. And so I do want to note that this is something that we're looking at, because we think that especially for institutions that don't have a lot of bandwidth to work on these things, is going to need to be a necessary component. But certainly in these early days, what Hugo said I think is really correct, which is that the tuning is going to have to be somewhat done by the locations until we can look at some of these other areas.
Great. So we'll just Pascal, you hit the answered question. I don't have the question and I can't read it out. So don't do that until I read it out. So the next question was, are you going to use Nessus Pro in credentialed or anonymous mode? And also, is Nessus Pro mass scan only looking at public IPs? So Pascal?
Yeah, for now, the mask and the question that I removed is I think was the same, the exact same, or mainly the same topic. We're using Nessus Pro because of the licensing cost. It's currently running outside of the member infrastructure, so it's running from an Azure tenant, Linux VM. and it's not authenticated scan. So right now it's bringing a view of what information you could retrieve when scanning from the internet. And in our plan, at some point, where we wish to integrate with the member vulnerability system, whether it's Nessus or another one. Right now, we can only test with Nessus and Expose. That's the one that we have. And the idea, again, is to be able to cross-reference this information. So whether it is it seen by Nessus and Shodan, then that's what concerned me, or is it seen by BitSite, and what's the risk reported by Nessus? It's the same information. So right now, unauthenticated, running on Azure, and we will at some point prepare a way to upload your own vulnerability vulnerability information from your on-site scanning into the dashboards.
Great. So the next question is, what is the relationship between the business application versus the infrastructure? So Hugo, I think perhaps you covered this in your response, but I'll just ask if there's anything to add. I misinterpreted your answer.
I think that right now what we need to understand is that we don't have asset management as part of that service. That's as Isaac was saying, that may come later. If you want to map a business application name with an infrastructure component, that you would want to put risk base based on that. But at this stage, that's not part of what will be offered in the first iteration. It is on, as we said, it is on our radar, but at this stage, like what we want to provide is kind of that external view of your network, because that gives you as well kind of that higher risk, although there's always internal risk, but that gives you still the higher risk of how exposed you are from the public.
Great. So the next question is there an ability to detect internal vulnerabilities, i.e. sensors located inside a firewall?
Right now, no, but that's something that we will be looking at. It's going to be either the user manually upload is information in the Azure blob, and we're trying to do something similar to that with one of the member right now, where they will upload their Nessus data in the Azure blob once transformed. So it's coming, maybe in a couple of months or a year if it takes longer.
Yeah, and actually that sort of answer reminded me of one other key component that I wanted to mention as part of this. And so we know that there are other organizations out there that have done a number of things around vulnerability management, in particular in BCnet. They're providing and have provided sort of vulnerability scanning to institutions for quite a while now. And so we've had some early conversations with BCnet about how we can partner together and leverage this. And so one of the things that we are looking at is actually BCnet would potentially provide this as part of what they're currently doing, because they have access to a range of data as well. If that makes sense, again, early days in part of the conversation, early days in our evaluation of what we're looking at. And so, but a key component that we're looking at is how do we make it so that institutions can compare themselves to the wide range of data we see across Canada inside our sector. And so there's a lot of opportunity for us to work closely together and figure out the most effective way for institutions to collaborate and participate, whether it be with a provincial or territorial organization that they leverage to get access to and connect into CanSSOC. So the next question was, will there be any way to do on-demand scanning of particular hosts, i.e. new server being introduced?
So I guess I can tackle that one. So it is something that we were thinking about. It's definitely not in the first phase, as we're trying to scale up the initial foundation for the vulnerability management platform. definitely it's one of the things that we are looking at when we have to deal with the long-term costs associated with scaling out the infrastructure. So there are definitely, we definitely see the need for this, especially with the upcoming current threats when new systems that are being there and trying to at least close the gap between the scan cycles coming from the different sources. But of course, there are costs, whether it's the infrastructure or even scheduling and being able to implement those one-off scans. But it is something that we want to eventually roll into the platform.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. So there is one final question that I will, so we can talk about. I do just want to finish off by sort of highlighting kind of where we're at as it relates to vulnerability management. So as you know, I started out by talking about the services phases because this still is an evaluation. We've been working on it for a little while and evolving it and providing additional information in it based on feedback we've received from some of those institutions that have been testing it out. And so we're going to continue to evaluate this and look at where we move forward and how quickly should we push and how many resources should we put towards that. And so one of the key components of that is really getting feedback from the broader community about what you want to see. So if you sort of, based on this demo, if you see that this is something that would be really advantageous to your institution, please reach out to us. You can send us a note at info@canstock.ca. I'd also encourage you to complete the survey when it gets sent out about the webinar, because we will ask the question there. We're eager and engaging and getting sort of even more direct feedback. And so if we can follow up with you about additional thoughts and feedback into this initiative, that would be really valuable. A subsequent question that we received is, could you share a roadmap of CanSSOC capabilities? And so ultimately, currently, the way where we sit, we don't have a pretty documentation on this yet, but something that we're working on is the 3 things that we are investing and working on right now is threat feed, as you saw today, which is in pilot stage, vulnerability management, which is building off continuous monitoring, which is in pilot/evaluation stage, as well as detection and response. And so those are the 3 initiatives that we are currently spending quite a bit of time and resources on evaluating. In terms of sort of a roadmap, like I noted, we're not an MSSP, and so we don't have this 5-year plan of all of the things that we're going to map out at this given stage. We have ideas of things that we think might make a lot of sense. We're really interested in feedback from the broader community about what that looks like and how we move forward. And so that community is each one of the institutions that are part of this, as well as working closely with the National Research and Education Network and the partners that are part of the NREN, as they work very closely with the institutions in their given jurisdictions and have a good understanding of what pain points are for those institutions, as well as additional context. And so that will continue to evolve how we move forward and what we do. So there was one more question. Will you keep historical data of identified vulnerabilities? The answer is yes, but Pascal?
Yes, we do. You can go through the scan date and select the date you would like to see, and all your dashboards and filter for host vulnerability and solution will be updated with the date that you selected. Once you and then you can browse through the dashboard and export the data, and it's going to be the data as seen on that scan date.
Thanks, Pascal.
We don't have to retention limit in Power BI right now.
Okay, so there were no more questions that came in. If any questions, we are 10 minutes early, but I'm sure no one would object to having an additional 10 minutes in their calendar in the start of the semester. So just a few final points. If you were to reach out and said, when is this available as a pilot service? The answer would be something along the lines, as soon as we can make it happen. As I noted before, we're working very closely with Canary and their advisory committee, as well as their working groups, as well as we're really interested in seeing what the demand is. And so if there is a lot of interest and demand related to vulnerability management, then we'll be able to prioritize and move quicker on it. We're hoping that we'll be able to launch it potentially as a pre-pilot in early 2021, potentially even late 2020. It depends a little bit on how things play out. And so again, send us your feedback or complete the survey so we can have a better understanding of where we sit. We're interested and open to feedback on anything. Send an email. You can reach us on email at info@canstock.ca. In addition, we are excited to launch our Twitter account, and so please follow us at CanSSOC, and we will follow you back. And finally, we have created a YouTube channel which you can access, and we've archived all of our old videos on there, as well as we'll be putting up the next one once it's ready to go. And finally, if you are interested in threat feed, please check out our website and complete the expression of interest, and we will connect with you as soon as we can. So with that, thank you, Dennis and Pascal, for presenting today, and Hugo and Isaac and Victoria for helping with the questions, and Canary and Christina for moderating. Have a great day, all.